Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter, and this is Cookies and Canvas for Kids. All right, so today we're going to be painting Koi Fish Pond, and I'm going to be eating cranberry oatmeal cookies. So let's paint our canvas and eat our cookies. So for materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 canvas, which you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'm going to be using. I will be using acrylic paint today. The colors are titanium white, cobalt blue, green oxide, chrome yellow, fire red, Mars black, and burnt umber, which I'll refer to as brown. And you can certainly switch those colors up as you'd like, but that's what I'm going to be using. I will be using for tools today, I'm going to have a number 2 pencil, just generic, no fancy thing there. I'm going to be using 3 brushes today. I'm going to use a 1/2 inch wide bristle brush, a number 8 round brush, and a number 1 round brush, and I'll refer to them as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. You're going to need a cup of water for washing your brushes, and you'll need a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down in the description below, I'm going to be providing you with a few things. One of them is a link where you can get this entire convenient paint kit. I've put it all together for you in a nice package if you want to get these exact colors and brushes. I'm also going to be providing to you a free downloadable image of the final painting, so you can print that and use it as a visual reference as you go along, as well as written step-by-step instructions that you could certainly print and use those as well. And the most important thing that I'm going to be providing you in the link below is a recipe to my delicious cranberry oatmeal cookies. And that's all we're going to need today. All right, so what we're going to be doing for the first step is we are outlining our fish, and we're going to be using our pencil to do so. I'm going to have 3 fish, but you could have as many as you want. And we're just doing the basic shape of the body for this outline. We're not doing any fins or the tip of the tail or anything, just the basic outline. So when I do this, I want mine to kind of look like they're swimming. So I'm going to have my bodies kind of at a little bit of a bend as opposed to super straight. And they are in the shape of kind of like a tadpole or a fish, like the top of a fish. Duh. I guess that's pretty silly, but that's the shape of them. Or like a long teardrop that's in a kind of a wavy fashion. So I'm going to start my first one. My first one I'm going to have at the top of my canvas, and it's going to be kind of an arcing motion. I'm going to have the head a little bit to the right of my halfway mark. So if you visually have this as your halfway mark, I'm going to come down maybe about 4 inches and go over to the right. And that's where I'm just going to kind of start my fish. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this a kind of an arcing motion, and I'm going to bring this part down a little bit farther than where I'm going to have my head. And then when I come back over like this, I'm doing a similar motion, but I want my head to be a little bit wider than this tail part and through here. So something like this. So it kind of looks like a tadpole. And the next one I'm going to have one coming like here, and it's going to go over to the side of my canvas over that way. So I'm going to have my head is going to be maybe just a little bit below this one. And then I'm going to do the same thing. You can do either the outside edge or the inside edge first, whatever works for you. I'm going to do the outside edge, and I'm just going to kind of bring mine over kind of close to the edge of my canvas, maybe about 1 inch or 2 away. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring it up on this side. So this one is clearly a lot smaller than that one. You can have them whatever sizes you want them to be. And then I'm going to do another one kind of with its head somewhere about here. And, you know, not as far over as this one, maybe a little bit in towards the middle more. And then I'm going to have its tail wrapping into this area here. So here I go. I'm going to start my head just like I started all the other ones. I'm going to do the outside edge of it, and I don't want it to come out as far as this tail, so I'm just going to kind of bring it up in through here. And you can see I'm kind of sketching this. You don't have to do a really clean line. And then I'm going to do the same thing, keeping this end a little bit more narrow, and then when I get to the head of it, it's going to be a little bit wider. And that is all I'm going to do for that first step. The next step, we're going to use our bristle brush or our big brush, so you can get that out, take a bite of your cookie, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're doing for the next step is we're going to paint the water. I'm using my big bristle brush for this step, and the three colors that I'm going to be using are green, blue, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to start with blue and white, blue and green on my brush, and I'm going to be applying it in a circular motion for the most part. The only time I'm not going to use a circular motion is when I'm right next to my fish, and in that case I'm just going to kind of outline it, but then I go right back to that circular motion so it doesn't end up looking like I have an outline around my fish. Every time I go to pick up paint, I'm going to change my color combination. So right now I had green and blue. I'm just going to pick up blue, and I'm not going to wash my brush. So you're going to start to see the color transitions that are going to happen. You could have this all one solid color if you want to. If you really like the dark blue, by all means use that more. I like to have the color variations, which is why I'm also using green and I'm also using white. So right now I'm going to pick up a little bit of green and white, and I'm doing this circular motion. I'm going right next to my fish, and I'm doing the circles, but I'm also kind of blending it in with that previous section. And again, you can have this as light or as dark as you want. I just picked up blue for my next reloading of the brush. And when I do this, I overlap my layers or my sections so that way they look like they belong together. And you can imagine this to be your own beautiful pond that you've created in your backyard, or you can imagine it the one that sits in the store that you're always looking at and you're like, oh my God, I totally want to have that. The one that, is at the pet store. You can make this into whatever you want. You can have, it be as if it's in, some tropical place somewhere. I think koi fish typically are, I think they're bred in Asia. I could be wrong about that, but you might want to Google that just to fact check me. But you can really make these into whatever you want. Right now, the water, if you have more of the blue in it, that's going to make it look more like oceanic, or something more in with that vibrant blue to it. If you put a little bit of green in it, it might look like there might be some plant life or something underneath that water, which is why I really like to use the green also, because to me that makes it look a little bit more of like a natural tone. But again, I'm using all three colors. I'm using blue, green, and white, and I just alternate the colors on my brush, so that way I'm going to have these light spots and dark spots. And I'm not using too much pressure, which means I'm not pushing really hard on my canvas. That allows me to get this really nice, the blending action to it. If you push hard, you might end up lifting the paint right off of the canvas, which we don't want to do that. Or you might end up blending it too much, which means you might end up getting one solid color, which again, if you like that, that's totally fine too. But for me, I like to have these multiple colors as I go along. I want it to look like there's movement in the water, like these fish are totally swimming around and they're making, ripples in the water or waves in the, they might not make waves, but they could definitely make ripples as they go along. And putting these different color variations, that's going to give the viewer the idea that this water is moving. There might be 76 fish in this little pond. It could be a pond, it could be, you know, some lake somewhere, it could be a brook or a stream, or, you know, it could be really anywhere you want it to be. But to me, a lot of koi fish, they reside in ponds, so I'm gonna refer to this probably as a pond most of the time. And I'm just kind of finishing up here. I got a little bit more to go over here, and you can take your time. You can spend, you know, as much time as you want to on this, or you can just kind of cruise right through. It's going to be a visual preference on your part. If you want your colors more blended, you can sit and labor over it a little while, or you just kind of have fun with it, make these colors into, you know, some nice aquatic representation, and you can make them more green or more blue or more white. The darker it is, the deeper that water is going to look. So if you have more of the blue and the green and less of the white, that's going to make it look like it's really, really deep water. If you use a little bit more white, it's going to make it look like it's a little more shallow, like we're being able to see more stuff on the bottom and there's more light within the water. So again, it's all kind of a visual preference. If you want yours to be nice and super dark, I'm going for kind of a darker look on mine. And if you bump into your fish like I just did, don't worry about it. We're going to be painting over it in a little while anyways. And some people do like to paint the edges or the sides of the canvas. So if you want to go ahead and do that, you're more than welcome to. We are going to be using the medium brush for the next step. So after you get this all nice and done, and what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of going back over, making sure I didn't miss any spots. And if I do have some thick paint in any areas, which means a lot of paint, this will help me to kind of thin it out so it doesn't take too long to dry. But we are going to switch brushes to that medium round brush. So once you get done this last little kind of touch up on your water, you can put this big brush away in your water cup, and you can take out your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we are painting the first layer of our fish. I'm gonna be using my medium round brush, and I'm gonna be using brown and white. And I'm gonna use them on my brush at the same time. So I'm gonna pick up brown and white, I'm gonna start with like a 50-50 ratio on my brush, but I'll probably end up adding a little bit more white. The reason I'm doing this is because I want there to be like a natural color to the fish, and I feel that if we do a solid color, it's gonna look flat. So I like to use both colors on my brush at the same time, and this is going to give me an uneven color to the fish, which will make it look more natural. So again, I've got brown and white on my brush, and I'm going for kind of like a light creamy color. You could do just white if you wanted to, but again, I want mine to look like they're underwater and maybe they've got, you know, a little hue of, you know, some dirt on them or something, but I definitely like mine to have more of a natural look to them as opposed to that bright, bright white. So again, I'm using brown and white at the same time on my brush. No fancy brush stroke here. You just want to get the whole thing colored in, and you want to make sure that you are coloring in right up to your water's edge. You don't want any unpainted space between your water and your fish. So I'm just going to kind of keep going here until I get all of my fish painted in. And again, every time I reload my brush, maybe one time I use more white, or maybe one time I use more brown. So that way I do end up with some lighter areas and some darker areas. And again, that just adds to the illusion that these might resemble realistic fish by the time we're done with them. And if you want yours to look like, you know, more illustrative and have a little bit more fun with it, you can make pink fish, or you could make their bodies yellow. You could make this base color really whatever you want it to be. But I'm going for a little bit more of a realistic look to it, so that's why I'm choosing to use the brown and the white, just to kind of get this to resemble what appears to me like a typical koi fish. And koi fish, oh my God, when we get to the color, the little markings on them, they come in so many different colors and patterns, and it's really, really cool to see these fish. They just have, if you look at them in person, they just have so many varieties and species of this type of fish. It's very, very cool. They are a special, you know, fish to own. They almost kind of resemble like large, fancy goldfish, in my opinion, because I know a lot of people who have had those goldfish ponds in their backyard, and to me, some of those goldfish kind of look like these koi fish, and then you can intermingle a couple of cool koi fish in with your, you know, your wild goldfish or whatever. But I'm just kind of wrapping this step up. Again, I'm just using brown and white, making sure I get all the way to the edge, and then just making sure I have the whole thing colored in. We are going to use the same brush for the next step. So once you get your fish colored in here, you're going to wash and dry this same brush in preparation for the next step. All right, so what we're going to be doing for the next step is we are painting the fins and the whiskers. Whiskers. I don't know if they're whiskers. it's I don't know. They're like the things that are on catfish that and cats have whiskers and the catfish have whiskers. So I think that's what these are called too, but you can certainly Google that. I'm going to be using my medium brush, and I'm going to be using white and brown, mostly white. And when you're doing this step, or when you're prepping for this step, if you still have some blue water or wet water, the blue is still wet, you can just blow dry it or blow on it. Just sit there and blow. It'll dry soon enough. But you definitely want your water to be dry before you do this step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put just a tiny touch of brown and more white on my brush. And my fins are going to be coming from the body, and they're going to go back towards the tail. So whatever direction your head is going, the fins are going to go in the opposite direction. Koi fish can have 2 sets on either side or 3 sets on either side. So whatever you're feeling, if you've got a really long fish, you could do like 3 sets. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to, on each, the first set is going to be kind of like at the bubbly part of the head. And I'm just going to really not think about this too hard. I'm going to bring my brush towards the back and maybe make 1 or 2 swipes and then clean it up on the inside. So here we go. I'm going to go maybe 1, 2, I think I need a little more paint. Maybe 1, 2, and then clean it up on the inside. So here I go. I'm just going to keep repeating this step. So I'm going to go from here, 1, 2, and clean it up on the fish. So because you're inevitably going to hit the fish, so when you hit the fish, this just helps to clean it up. And I'm going to also do the same thing on the tail. So I'm going to bring these little like wispy ends out of the tail. They almost look like feathers. And they can go kind of in any direction. So I'm going to do all my fins and my tail, and then I'll show you about the whiskers. So again, I'm just kind of repeating what I did. I'm going to go like 1, 2, maybe 3, and then clean it up on the fish itself. And if you like, I need to add a little more brown just so it kind of blends in. And then I'm going to do 1, 2, and again, they all just go back towards that tail. 1, 2, and then if you need to clean it up on the fish part itself, go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to do just cleaning up my fish here. I'm gonna do the little tail up at the top, and this one, I'm gonna have this one kind of curving more down, like he's really in motion. And again, you can have this as fluffy as you want, or as, you know, carefree as you want. Think of it like there's these fish, I think they're called butterfly fish, and they have these awesome like fins that look like butterfly wings. So this kind of reminds me of that. So another visual reference you can refer to if you're Googling anything about the koi fish themselves. And again, I'm just kind of repeating my step. I just went through a little bit of wet blue, so obviously I did not dry mine well enough, but that's okay. We're just gonna paint right through it. No big deal. I'm gonna go on to the tail now. I'm gonna have this tail is gonna have a couple of different pieces to it. I'll have that one going up, and maybe this one's got a little piece coming down this way. And then I just have the little whiskers. So I'm just gonna use white, and these are just gonna come out just behind the edge of the nose. So if this is the edge of the nose, I'm just gonna maybe do, and you could certainly use your small brush, but I'm just kind of making these little, like 1 or 2 little whiskers coming off the sides of the face. And again, think of it like a catfish, or a cat for that matter. So just a couple of little whiskers. I don't make them go straight. They've got a little bit of a bend to them. So that way they almost look like a little piece of hair coming out. And we're gonna use this same brush for the next step. So when you get that all done, you can wash and dry the medium brush, take a bite of your cookie, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we are painting our lily pads. I'm gonna be using my medium brush, and I'm gonna be using green, yellow, and white. And like the other steps, I'm gonna use them all on my brush at the same time. There's lots of varieties of lily pads. I don't know their exact names, but the type that I'm gonna do has like a little split in the leaf. So it's kind of circular, and then there's almost like a V section to it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put all 3 colors on my brush at the same time, white, yellow, and green. And my goal is to have my lily pads different shades of green, and that's why I'm doing them all in different shades. So how I'm gonna start this is I'm gonna start it with a skinny V, like that, and then I'm going to make the exterior part of the leaf, and I'm just gonna color it in. So you can have a light green or a dark green. I'm using kind of quite a bit of paint on my brush just so I can kind of get the whole thing covered in here. And if you have little peek throughs of the blue or the water underneath, don't worry about it. That's gonna make it look pretty natural. And I made that one a little wobbly, so I'm gonna just kind of circle that a little bit more. And if you want the pads to be next to each other, I did this in the corner just so I could show you a nice demonstration. I'm going to put a little one right next to it, but in order for you to see the difference between this one, you have to make it either lighter or darker. And if you want it behind, you can just do a little piece of it. So maybe this one you don't see the V to it. Maybe this one is just going to be like part of it, and it's just going to be a circle. So you can really have fun with placing as many as you want wherever you want. I just reloaded my brush. I think I'm gonna do maybe a little one over here, but I don't wanna do it in the same direction as that one. So maybe I'm gonna make an upside down V like this, and then I'll make it like that and color it in. So again, they can all be different shapes, sizes. You want to have a variety. Maybe I've got another one maybe right behind this one. Maybe I'll use a little bit more white and yellow, so this one's brighter, and this one's going to be behind it, so I'm not going to put the little V on that one. I'm going to have one maybe over here somewhere, so I start it again with my V, then I'm going to make my circle part, and then color it in. So it's just kind of a systematic shape that you're making. You want to make them in different directions. You want to use the V can be open more or closed more on some. You want to make sure they're all in different directions. But I gotta caution you, because I know that on mine sometimes it ends up looking like a big Pac-Man. So those of you who know what that video game is know that this may very easily look like a big greenish yellow Pac-Man. So, just make sure you give it a variety of directions and sizes. I know I'm going to have a big flower on this one later, so I'm not going to do too much over here. I might do one more small one, maybe a little bit brighter one. So maybe I've got this one is something like this. Maybe my V is off of the canvas, so you can't see that one. So again, you can really have some fun. I think I'm going to put a couple up here in the corner. So I'm going to start it with my V, and then I'll put it like this, color it in. And again, I'm not doing anything fancy to color it in. I'm just coloring it in. You could put your brush stroke in different directions, but I think when you're using these 3 colors at once on your brush, it's going to give it enough of a color variety that it's not going to matter if you get fancy with your brush strokes. And again, I'm just going to make this one behind it a little bit darker. You can make the one underneath darker or the one on top darker. It doesn't matter. Nobody's going to really notice which one needed to be lighter or darker. I'm going to just make this top one a little bit lighter so you could see the difference to it. And then we are going to switch brushes to our small brush for the next step. So once you get your lily pads all on here, you've got them assorted well enough, you can put this big brush or the medium brush away in your water cup and take out your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so this is a super fun step. We're going to be putting the decorations or finishing our fish really with the markings on them and the eyes. So this is a really fun step. I'm going to be using my small brush. The colors I'm using are yellow, red, black, and white. But you really could use whatever colors you want. If you want to do purple, you could mix your blue and your red together. If you want to do pink, you could mix your red and your white together. I'm going to be using red is going to be one of the colors that I'm going to be using for the markings. And I'm also going to be using orange, but you don't have orange on your palette. So how I'm going to do that is I'm going to mix some yellow and red to get orange. So I'm going to take a little bit of yellow and a little bit of red, and I'm just going to mix them together until I get a shade of orange that I like and that is different than my red. And you could use just a yellow. You could really do whatever kind of color you want. And this is just an arbitrary kind of markings. You can put them on the head, you can put them on the tail, you can put them on the fins, you can put them wherever you want. So what I really am doing, I have orange on my brush right now, and I'm just going to be wiggling my brush. I go nice and close to the edge sometimes, and then I'm just going to kind of wiggle my brush and let happen whatever's going to happen. I might end up with a big, huge mark. I might be going about it and say, oh, I think I just want a little mark here. So I just make a little mark there. You can have a ton of fun doing this. If you want to put some in the fins, I do recommend just putting it like towards the body a little bit. I wouldn't go full on all the way to the edge of the fins because you might lose the effect of them being light and fluffy. You can put these again on the tail. You could make them look like anything you want. You could have cheetah markings, you could have zebra stripes, you could do polka dots, you could do, I don't know, question marks. You could really have a whole bunch of fun with this. But that's all I'm going to do for the orange one. So now I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just going to start picking up red. And I'm going to do the same thing with my red. I'm going to, maybe this one's got a little in the tail. I'm going onto this fish here. So I'm bringing some towards the end, and you can see, well, you might not be able to see from there, but since I didn't wash my brush, I've got some red and orange on this particular fish. And I don't like to just kind of go systematic. I'm really going to kind of hop all over the place. That way it gets my brain out of thinking about it too much. If you sit here and you go, oh, I'm going to do here, then I'm going to do here, then I'm going to do here, it might look very systematic. And I think these markings on koi fish tend to be a little chaotic, and they have all of them are very unique. So don't get hung up on making it look perfect. Just kind of have fun with it. Just take that brush, put a color on it. You could have little spots, you could have big spots. Have fun with it and just make it whatever you want it to be. Sometimes you can, kind of sit back, put your head back a little bit, look at it from a distance. That's going to help you to decide whether or not you want to add another marking or two. And again, they can have them on the face if you want. I've got a couple going on this face over here. They could be small markings, they could be big markings. Maybe yours end up looking like a real butterfly. Maybe you do, your favorite monarch butterfly and you put those kind of markings on. You can do so much. These koi fish come in all different kinds of colors, so whatever color you decide to make yours will work. Again, I'm kind of just putting some down on the tail too, just to add to the length of the fish. If you put them all at the head, you might kind of make that fish look a little short. And if you want to, I'm not washing my brush, I'm picking up some black. A lot of these fish have little black markings in them too. So you could add these cool little additional marks in with any of these fish. So if you dig the black, by all means, go for it. Add these little bits of black. Maybe you've got one that has its own black mark. And then when I go to do the eyes, I'm just going to wipe my brush on my paper towel like this. And I'm going to pick up some black. And the eyes are going to be behind your whiskers, and they're on the outside edge of the fish's head. So I'm just going to use a little bit of black, and I'm going to make myself this little like bump on the outside of the head. And if you go into the head a little bit, don't worry about it. So I'm going to start with just black. So I've got my 2 for that one. I'm going to just systematically go to all of my fish. Don't know if my hand's in your way right now. And I'm going to make these little bumps. So I have shaky hands, for those of you who have not watched me paint before, and how I help to correct that is I use my hand or my pinky to brace myself on my canvas. So again, I just did a little line. I'm going to do a little bump. I'm going to do that for this last fish here. So a little line and a little bump. This one's got big eyes. That's good, all the more to see with. And then I'm going to just wipe my brush off on my paper towel, and I'm going to pick up white. And the white is going to be the glare on the outside of the eye. So even if you run into wet black, don't worry about it. It'll blend and it'll look nice. So I'm just doing a little white outline of that black section. And this is going to give the illusion that it's got a little bit of a shine on it. And if you run through wet black and you feel like you've got too much on your brush, just wipe it off on your paper towel and pick up some fresh white. And again, if you get a little bit of black in there and it turns a little gray, it's going to only make it look more natural. So don't fret about it. And that's all we're going to do for that step. And we are going to switch to our medium brush for the next step. All right. So what we're going to do for the next step is we are painting our lotus flowers. And I'm going to be using my medium brush. And the 3 colors I'm using are white, yellow, and red. And this is kind of like a 2-step process. We're going to do the center of the flower, and then we're going to do the petals on the outside. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to start with yellow and white on my brush at the same time. And it really doesn't matter how much of each you have. The white is going to help that yellow not be see-through. So you can't just use yellow. You have to use the white with it. So now that I have yellow and white on my brush, I'm going to decide where I want my flowers to be. So for me, I'm going to have a little one here. I'm going to have one down here somewhere, and then I'm going to have another one over here. But you could put yours wherever you want. I'm going to have the center of the flower at the top. So our flowers we're looking at the flowers from the side, not from looking down at them. We're looking at them from the side. So here I go. I have yellow and white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little burst. So I'm going to start something like this, and then I'm just going to burst out almost like a little shoot of grass. So yellow and white, and you just kind of burst it out. Something like that. I'm going to do another one down here because I want to have a flower down at the bottom of my canvas. So I'm going to just kind of start it something like this and just kind of burst it out. And I don't overblend it or overdo it because I just want to have that little pop of brightness. So yellow and white, I'm going to have one somewhere in here. So again, my center, I'm just going to kind of burst this out with some yellow and white. And if you run into some wet green, that's okay. Life's going to go on. And I've got them, this one's going to be a little bit bigger, so I'm making this one a little bit wider. And you don't need them to be super huge. Just maybe this one's about 2 inches wide, this is about 1.5 inches, and that's about 1 inch. And then I'm going to just quickly wash and dry my brush. So I'm washing and drying my brush. And then I'm going to be using red and white for the petal part underneath. So I've got red and white on my brush at the same time. And how I'm going to start all of these is with like a cup underneath this the yellow and white center. So I'm going to just go cup. This one I don't have to because that one's off my canvas, but I'll do it to this one. I got a little cup like that. And now I'm going to make all of my petals coming off of that cup for the most part. So I've got my little cup here. So I'm going to just kind of, and you can see I'm not over blending. I'm just kind of taking and I'm doing a couple of little flicks. I don't really want this to be too dramatic and too much painted. I just really want to give it the hints of these colors. So once you have, one done, then I'll do this one because it's easier to look at. So I've got my cup part. Now I'm going to go and I'm making these little petals coming off. So the ones at the bottom, I kind of turn directions, and you can make a lot of them. I just picked up some white as opposed to red and white. So if you want there to look like there's a layered kind of look, you can certainly kind of add additional ones. You can add a couple coming off the back side of it if you want to. And then this other one that I have right here, because I don't see the bottom to it, I'm just going to bring some of these little petals coming up the sides. So that way it's the illusion that there's a full-on lotus down here. Maybe you can't, I don't even know if you can see it. There you go. Now you can probably see it a little bit better. And then I'm just going to kind of make sure that I don't have any gap underneath it. And then we have one final step to go, and it's going to be with your tiny brush. So once you get these lotus petals all beautiful and you have it as full as you want to, you can, it's so hard for me to stop doing flowers. I'm like, no, but I want more petals and more petals and more petals. But we're going to switch brushes to the tiny brush. So when you get done doing this, you can put this medium brush away in your water cup, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I'm going to use my small brush. I'm going to use black paint. I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going to do this one in the bottom right. You can sign with your initials. Oh, I'm using black paint. I don't know if I said that. You can do your initials, you can do the date, whatever, a symbol, whatever makes you happy. This is your identifying mark. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you loved your cookies as much as I did. I don't even have any cookie left to eat on this final step. And I look forward to painting and eating cookies with you again sometime.
Yum yums.